Yeah, Artie, don't say anything you don't want to say.
Don't. I never say anything that I don't want to say, except when I do. So
I thought, I don't know. I was mixed up, but when you sent the email, send me the link type thing.
I thought we were at my place last week.
I was planning
June
something.
9th.
I was planning something, and it was going to be next week because I thought it was at my house.
Actually, I think I screwed that up. I think we're supposed to be at my place this week. The last one I have is the 9th at my place. It would have been the 16th. People will figure it out. It's all good, right? So
what do you want to do next week? You want to go to your place or my place?
Oh, we'll just go to your place.
Okay, okay. Hey, Carl, Steve, Mike, stop!
We'll figure it out sooner or later. It's all good.
You know something, Artie?
What's that?
I talk with a lot of people. I know people, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they all have good things to say about you. Not one derogatory comment.
I find that very difficult to believe. But okay, proceed.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. And you know what? Okay. This is not a can of worms, but the CSRs.
Yes.
Man, how come no one has contacted you for help, or the gang that has a lot of comments for help? It's like,
I don't know. I mean, of the folks who have been, I don't know that I've been more vocal than anybody else. It's just that I have a YouTube channel. So, I have people listen to me about this stuff occasionally. I, of course, would never argue with such an esteemed member of the wargaming community as Mr. David Townsend.
Of course not. So let me pick it off. But I think people who had criticisms I find it very constructive. Very constructive to pick up on that and build from that,
Great. That's good that somebody thinks that way. I have not been contacted by anybody. I have been contacted by multiple non-Charles S. Roberts Awards people who want to do their own award.
I know. But you know what?
Which I don't see any harm in.
No, there's no harm. I mean, it could even be better a million miles from the Charles S. Roberts. But Charles S. Roberts, there's the title, Charles S. Roberts.
Yeah, and that does and should mean something.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes,
it means something to me. I mean, that's...
Hey, Charles.
Charlie Roberts.
I know. And you know what? Do you mind if I suggest what I was just talking about to the people who take these suggestions?
Oh, by all means, go right ahead.
Good.
I do see that they have made adjustments to the categories this year. That was one of the points. I don't think the most important point of complaint about last year's, but that's something. They don't have it's now, I think it's Ancients to Medieval now, which is a category that makes more sense thematically than Ancients to pre-Napoleonic or whatever it was before.
Because what? It's too large?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got, the Battle of Kadesh at 3500 BC all the way up to Louis XIV. That's crazy.
But I mean, how do you categorize that's huge from Ancients to Napoleonic is just huge.
Exactly. So here's part of the problem. So and again, you had a Napoleonic category, but not an American Civil War category. Are there more? I mean, it is a challenging question to answer, right? Because you have to think not only here's this category that makes sense in some kind of thematic way, but here's a category that's populated enough that enough games come out in any given year, and you kind of look ahead too, right? Just you may have had. There are trends where sometimes you'll get 10 games in a year on some specific topic and then you don't see another one for another decade.
Space.
There's tons of space games every year, but space war games, that was going to be a future topic suggestion of mine. Actually, would be sci-fi war games. Thus, the thematically appropriate shirt. But that is a challenging question, right? Do you want necessarily 30 categories? How fine grained do you want to go?
I don't know. How far grained do you want to go as someone watching this and critiquing it? That's
if I was to
I wanna
start,
know that.
if I was to start my own awards, which
Yeah.
I am not doing, I would have 3 categories. I would have World War II, pre-World War II, and post-World War II.
But hold on, you're contradicting.
And that's where I'd start.
But you're contradicting yourself now.
No, not at all. But you have to just make a decision about how fine-grained you want to be. The problem that I had with the categories from last year, which I recognize were pretty much the categories that they inherited from the Charlies from before, is that you had these relatively narrow categories, chronologically narrow categories, and then this 5,000-year period that doesn't make much sense. You have a Napoleonic period. Okay, what about a game about the French Revolution? Does it count as Napoleonic? It's 1792, 1793, rather than 1803. How do you define the Napoleonic period, right? You've got this 15 or 20-year period, and then you have World War II. But World War II, there's so many. I mean, probably half the war games that come out in any given year are probably World War II games. This is exactly the question.
Okay,
what counts? Do you say, like, do you start that period with the French Revolution, in which case you're just kind of hanging Napoleon's name on it, which is fine. But what's the definition, right? It didn't feel like my biggest criticism, the noisiest criticism is the U-boat criticism. Okay. Yeah, but that's not the most serious problem with what I saw last year.
Okay, good.
The most serious, that is irritating, but
wow.
But that, again, you need to, if you're going to define the category of war games in such a way so as to either include U-boat or not include U-boat, then fine, but do that. That's the problem, that we didn't have that. No. The most serious problem that I saw was the inclusion of games for awards in categories that didn't apply to those games, like best map. Game that won doesn't have a map. I think U-boat also won like best mobile game or something like that because it's app assisted. Should that count? I don't think so.
Well, let me stop you. What about the issue of U-boat being a non-war game or a war game? Now, who gets to say something like that?
Well, that's the problem. Isn't necessarily that it falls on one or another side of that. It's that there is no definition of that. That's I mean, everybody's going to have their own definition. The awards can have their own definition too. That would be fine. Define it in such a way that makes sense. And I think people would have been people would have been equally dissatisfied, but they would have had less ground to be dissatisfied.
I understand.
So I agree with Mike. I would include the French Revolutionary period in the Napoleonic period as well.
Well, would you include the Franco-Prussian War pre-World War I? Because that's World War I as far as I'm concerned.
Well, do you include? So I have, as I don't know that I've mentioned on the stream a lot, but I've shown it on my stream. I have a spreadsheet that I keep track of my war games inventory on. Okay, and because I'm that kind of nerd. And the category I use is goes ancients, medieval, late medieval / Renaissance / Age of Reason, which runs up to about 1790 or so, and then I have Napoleonic.
Say that again, please.
So I don't have enough games to fill a category on 16th century games, right? So I have like an ancients category, a medieval category, a post medieval category, which is like the Renaissance and Age of Reason and that kind of stuff. That runs up to about the American Revolution, and then I categorize by American Revolution, like post American Revolution, Napoleonic stuff. Stuff between Napoleonics. I'd like have an American Civil War period, which doesn't mean that the period is every game is in the period. Franco-Prussian War would fall into that period because it's at roughly the same time, to within 15 years or something.
And I'm telling you, it's because I'm part of this, okay? Right. But I kind of want to stay away from category. I don't know enough, okay? But I hear people on
You don't have to have chronological categories. There's no rule that says you have to. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you want to say best text encounter game versus best card assisted game versus best. There's nothing that says you need to categorize chronologically. It's just convenient to. I mean, there's precedent for that. And at least for me, my wargame interests are driven by my history interests. So I'm unlikely to buy a game on the Italian Wars, for example, of the 1400s or whatever it was, even though I have a game on that topic. I'm unlikely to buy a game on that topic, right? But you can't have a category for that because there's one game every decade gets released on the subject.
So where would you put that game? Miscellaneous?
I would put that game in medieval. That is where I have it. That's Arquebus by Richard Berg and GMT. I have it in medieval. Oh, also, here's a great conundrum. Great battles of history. Where do you put those, right? I mean, a lot of them are ancients, but some of them are like in the 12 and 1300s. Some of them are in the the Japanese ones are in the like 16th, 17th century, something like that.
Younger, even older.
So do you like categorize part of the series as ancients and part of the series as like Renaissance or something like that? And then you have the question of, do those periods mean anything when you're talking about a game set in Japan or China or someplace like that? Maybe they don't. So,
and where would you start? Like Richard Berg's Genesis?
The oldest game, so the war game that I have that starts the longest time ago, I think is Chariots of Fire, actually. Unless we're counting Civilization, like the old Avalon Hill Francis Tresham Civilization.
Is that a war game?
I don't think so.
Well,
but it's great. It's a great game. Chariots of Fire has a battle from like 3500 BC or something like that. But Genesis is another one that's like right in the neighborhood. So
yeah, I'm gonna.
And I have that too. So
yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah. Okay, because a lot of great criticism was had, man. A lot, and I thought, great, let's build on this, man.
Somebody back on the committee is watching these videos, going, "These sons of bitches." I'll tell you what, they're doing nothing but complaining.
No.
I wish this guy would just shut his pie hole.
So, what was your topic there, Ray? You didn't want to tell me.
Ancients, actually.
All righty.
So
okay. I got a problem with that.
Funny you should mention that. Yeah, sure. It's the longest category. It's the category that contains the most number of years.
No, I got a problem with when you say ancients. I don't know where to. It's just a straight line. I got no tactics for that. Let's go, and it's like a dice fest as far as I'm concerned, man.
Well, it can be, but have you played, say, Commands and Colors Ancients? Because that's a good place to start.
Okay.
There are different
hex encounter.
Well, I mean, there's Commands and Colors has hexes, and the shits, the blocks aren't really different from counters, in that they're the only piece of information they're giving you is what troop type they represent and the number of those blocks in a given hex. Okay. Whereas in something hex encounter, if like ancient battles of the ancient world or great battles of history or whatever, you're going to have some kind of strength or unit mass or something, something like that, like a morale value. Certainly, great battles of history has like a cohesion value that represents kind of the unit's ability to a bunch of things, but the unit's ability to take punches is one of them. So, I mean, I consider Commands and Colors to be a hex encounter war game, even though it's got blocks instead of counters. I think the distinction is absolutely meaningless. You could easily play it with counters and not blocks, or you can play with miniatures, as the several Commands and Colors games with miniatures attest. But as a hex encounter game, there's not a lot of only those two pieces of information, and I guess the color too is telling you what side the block's on. Only those three pieces of information is all you get. And that's all the system requires. Whereas a game with counters would probably have more information. There'd probably be some factors or something like strength points or something like that.
Yeah, but that's what you have on your cards. On your cards, of which unit you have. It's not on the counter. It's a miniature, but here's your information on the counter.
So I'm going to oversimplify this dramatically, and it does depend on which Commands Colors game you're talking about. But what the cards do is tell you which units you can move. So you'll play a card like left flank, and you'll be able to activate 2 or 3 or whatever it is, different units on the left side of your left side, and you're able to move those. So you may find yourself, having a problem in the center, and you don't have the cards to deal with that. But it does show you that, there are tactics, even though a lot of the battlefields are just big open plains. Not all of them are, but a lot of them are. There's different troop types that behave differently. The system models that in a quite simple and abstract, yet I think reasonably effective way. If you really want to get into the weeds on that, then you start looking at things like Great Battles of History, which is designed to model that kind of stuff. But it's not as simple as there's two big lines and they bash against each other, and at the end, whoever rolled better or has more guys wins, because it doesn't work that way. Looking at a battle like Cannae, where the Romans outnumbered the Carthaginians by a sizable margin, and they got absolutely smoked. So
I guess I don't know anything about the tactics.
Or Gaugamela, actually, where at Gaugamela, one of Alexander's big victories against the Persians, he's outnumbered dramatically. According to some sources, it's probably 5-1. And yet Alexander wins the battle, right? So,
well, Alexander, and it's funny, eh? Was he an asshole or was he a good guy?
I don't really know. I mean, he was certainly impactful. I don't think it's typically useful to think of historical figures necessarily in that way, unless they're relatively contemporary figures, like from the last 100 years or so. Then you can say Stalin was a dick. Yes. We don't like him. Yes. But it's hard to. I think it's very difficult to contextualize ancient world figures like that, and in some cases, even 17th, 18th, 19th century figures. I think it's very difficult to contextualize them in those terms.
So, what game are you going to start me off with? Ancients.
Oh, I would totally start with Commands and Colors. Ancients.
Okay, forget that. What game are you going to start with Ancients with me?
Okay, that I have. What do I got? Because I got actually a lot of Ancients games. I like, if we're going to talk about tactical games, then I like the Great Battles of History series, which does have a huge amount of coverage of Ancients, and it is available in 2 flavors. It's, again, more complicated than that, but you can basically play it with the regular rules or the simple Great Battles of History rules. Now, there's fans that fall in on either side of that debate, and I personally prefer the regular rules. The advantage of simple Great Battles of History is not really that it's that much simpler. It is a bit simpler. It's that it plays faster and the rule system is more unified. So in, say, Alexander versus SPQR versus Cataphract, right? You're talking about very different periods. You're talking about 400 BC versus 50 BC versus 600 AD. All right, don't pin me down to any specific dates. So you're talking about like very different types of.
You're talking 1,000 years, man.
Right. There's a lot of differences between those 3 games, right? They're all in the same series and they all have the same sort of infrastructure under the rules, but there's a lot of differences under that. There's a whole thing about the way Roman leadership works, for example, that you just simply don't have in like Republican Roman leadership, which you simply don't have in Alexander, and which you also, have a vastly evolved model of in Cataphract. Simple Great Battles of History kind of smooths that over and just says, here's this book. You play all the battles in the whole series. Now, it's not all the battles. There are some games that are not compatible with simple GBOH. Like the Japanese ones, for example, are not. At War Galley, obviously, is not because it's naval battles. And Caesar and Alexandria and the Elysia game are not because those are like specific engagements. But honestly, almost everything else you could pretty much play with simple GBOH. And it's just one book, right? You don't have to sit there and figure out that, hey, just because you played Alexander, this one thing doesn't work this way. Hoplite, which is the most recent boxed game in the series, is a chip pull mechanic. It completely changes the core mechanic.
Now, does that work for Ancients?
I think it does for Hoplite, yeah. I think it can. So how do you model the question that's being answered there is how do you model leadership in ancient battles, right? And there's ways to do that with a chip pull mechanic. Maybe as simple as just have more chits in the cup. I haven't played Hoplite, so I don't know that it works this way necessarily. Maybe you just put more chits in the cup for the good leaders, right? That's possible. In Alexander, you have this trump mechanism whereby like a high-rated leader, anybody can theoretically do it, but you have to make a roll to succeed. So if somebody else says, okay, I'm gonna activate Clownius the Lesser here to do something, Alexander can, or Caesar or somebody like that can say, no, I'm going to try to trump that. And they roll, and based on their leadership rating, if they succeed with the modifier to the roll, then they get to go instead. So that's a completely different way that leadership is modeled, and really makes those kinds of leaders, your Alexanders and your Caesars and maybe Belisariuses, are really potent.
You know, I want to get into Ancients. It's like coin. I got some psychological block or something. And just because I don't understand it, it's like, ooh, you know.
Well, there's also nothing that says that you have to do tactical Ancients, right? There are strategic Ancients games, not all of which, some of which are fairly complicated, but not all of which. Off the top of my head, you have Sword of Rome from GMT. I'm not sure that's available now, but I got it a few years ago. There's Time of Crisis, about the crisis of the 3rd century, also from GMT, and actually it's a Ray Farrell design. I'm trying to think if Ray did Sword of Rome as well. He might have. There's Pax Romana, which is a Richard Berg design, which is a point-to-point movement, sort of strategic thing. That's got a very good reputation. There's I have it. I haven't played it. There's Genesis, right? Which is, if you're not into Romans or Greeks, then maybe you're into ancient Mesopotamia. Genesis is your bag then. There's a fair number of games on ancient Mesopotamia, but many, many, many of them are these sort of civvy type games that try to do what Civilization did rather than necessarily being war games, where I'd call Genesis a war game. Is there sufficient attention paid to naval engagements in ancient war games? So let me answer the question.
I hope you don't mind. I hope you don't mind.
There's about 4 games on ancient naval warfare ever. So I think the answer is no, but there's also incredible challenges in documenting and researching that topic. So I'm not really all that surprised. Sekigahara is it ancient though? It's like the 1500s or something like that. So I mean, I wouldn't call it ancients, but that's based strictly on a calendar idea that I don't know necessarily applies, right? When most people in like North America, probably Europe, think of ancients, they are going to think of ancient Europe and the Near East, and maybe India, and they're not really going to consider those periods in East Asia, in part because those periods don't map necessarily cleanly to East Asia, China, and Japan.
Okay, so, look at Trevor. Let's blast him now. Here's our chance.
Well, this is the Charles S. Roberts Awards agreed last year. So okay.
He's taking a shot. He's taking a shot.
Oh, he's probably trolling.
You see, I'm so. Flighty, I didn't even know he's taking a shot. Get out of here.
So,
I don't know if I have, and I think I'm gonna get the Worthington game.
mm-hmm.
I think there's 5 battles. I don't have it, man.
Oh, Dawn of Battle.
Dawn of Battle. Now I know you're gonna skip that because it's like super simple for you, but I think I need something like that, man.
Well, I mean, Commands and Colors Ancients is super simple too. I don't know that Dawn of Battle is any simpler. I mean, maybe it is, but it doesn't look magically simpler to me. And I'll vouch for, you know, Commands and Colors of any flavor is not like 100% to my tastes, but it's a fine system. It's fun to play. It's not hard to learn, particularly. Some versions are fussier than others, right? Napoleonics is one of the more complicated ones, and Ancients is one of the simpler ones, but there's not a vast difference between the two either. So this is not to bash on Dawn of Battle. I just don't know anything about it, so I can't speak to it. Where I've played it, you know, a decent amount of Commands and Colors, and can say I liked it. There's also, I mean, over the history of war games, there's a ton of Ancients battles, you know, from companies like 3W did a bunch, and you know, SPI did a bunch, and the people who controlled S&T for, you know, whoever that was did a bunch. I mean, SPI did some, TSR did some, 3W did some, Decision did some. So in terms of number of issues, SPI has been controlled by Decision Games for like twice as long as it has everybody else put together, I think, or close to it.
I don't have Ancients Commanding Colors. I have the first Napoleonic, and I have the Samurai one, and obviously I have the one that started it all off there, Memoir 44.
Oh, that was the one that started it. Was Battle Cry, Civil War.
I thought it was Memoir 44. Okay.
Yeah, it was Battle Cry. So I have never played Battle Cry. I've played Ancients Napoleonics. I've played Medieval. There's one other one that I've played, and I can't think of what it is. Of the ones I've played, and there's a dozen more that I haven't, I like Napoleonics the best. So I think it's got a lot of interesting things in it, where you can like form squares, things like that.
Did you play the expansions of the Napoleonic? There's like 7 of them.
Yeah, not all of them. No, I played with the Russians and the Austrians. That's about it.
And you found it engaging?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to play. Totally fun to play. Yeah.
It wasn't below you.
No, I didn't think so. I mean, it's not like a super high intensity, you know, super detailed game, and you don't know if you're going into it with that expectation, you're going to be disappointed. But if you're going into it with the expectation that, hey, I'm going to sit here for 90 minutes or 2 hours maybe and play this game about, you know, Zama or something like that, it's tons of fun. There's a good scenario selection. One thing I will say is that the granularity of it is such that the fact that there are 60 scenarios for Ancients doesn't mean as much as it would in like ASL, because where the scenarios are vastly different and play vastly differently. They aren't necessarily as differentiated as that, especially for Ancients, because like I said, a lot of the battles just take place on blank maps.
Would you consider a CNC game a beer and pretzel?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Would Borg agree with you?
Maybe. I've never spoken to him, so I don't have any. I have no interaction with him, nor have I really ever read interviews or anything like that. So I have no sense of Richard Borg's personality whatsoever, other than what he's designed. So yeah, I mean, I don't think he would consider it they're super hardcore war games or anything like that. I think that would be a ludicrous categorization of those games, but they're fun.
How long would it take to teach someone who's never played a war game?
Commands and Colors, half an hour.
That's it?
Yeah. Absolutely. So that is actually why I own Commands and Colors Ancients. It is, if I figured, hey, I could have a use for a game like a new Wargamer type level of game, right? That's why I have Commands and Colors Ancients, because it's easy to teach, it's fast to play, it's a very attractive game. Now that said, you know, I will, if up to my own druthers and have whoever I want to play with, I would just as soon throw down Great Battles of Alexander or something like that. So,
and is in Commanding Colors, there's no Alexander.
Well, there's the ancient Greek battles, some of which are Alexander's battles. How I don't have that set, so I don't know how they're modeling that. But generally speaking, you just kind of ignore that. You don't have. You might have like a modifier based on the hand size or the number of flags that you need to win the game that reflects the leadership differential. But you don't have like, this is Caesar. I mean, you have a leader counter that doesn't have anybody's name on it that might be Caesar, but there's no like Caesar counter or Caesar block or Alexander block or anything like that.
What about White Dog Games, the Caesar Solitaire or something like that? Have you played
that? Is a super, I have not. White Dog has a lot of really interesting stuff, and especially a lot of really interesting solitaire stuff. What that look, is that a Ben Madison design? I think it is. I could be wrong. And his designs tend to be pretty interesting, but also pretty abstract. But when I say abstract, I do not necessarily mean simple, because some of those games are actually reasonably complicated. Trying to think of the one example I have in mind. I can't remember which one it is. That's a David Kershaw design. And is this a States of Siege game? Because it might.
I have no idea.
If it's a States of Siege game, then mostly those aren't terribly simple.
Well, they're not difficult.
Yeah, but some of them are a little fussier than others, though. I don't see that this is a States of Siege game, but the map makes it look a little bit like that. So I don't know. So the answer to your question is, it is a solitaire game by a respected designer that I have not played and cannot comment
on. You never played the Vietnam Solitaire by White Dog?
No. I have Gorbachev. I have the first Jihad and the Christianity one, with the name of which eludes me, but which there's been quite a bit of YouTube content about. I have another couple of them. So.
No, Kenneth, everything's fine.
Everything looks fine from here. I'm watching on the other thing here, so everything looks fine.
And you're going back to Trevor, Table Battle Ancients. I have Table Battles, and I have not played Table Battles. Though I have spoken to people who have played Table Battles who say it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's the only game I beat Carl Parazzi at.
Oh, well, there you go. Right. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I mean, when you have a new scenario, it's just another card, right? So that's kind of awesome. And otherwise, you're just playing with dice and these little sticks. So it's a super high portability game. Great for travel for that reason.
And what's this, The Mission?
The Mission is the History of Early Christianity game. That is, I'm pretty sure, a Ben Madison or a Ben Madison game with somebody else. That's from White Dog as well. It is also a solitaire game, and it's pretty neat. I've got that. XTR's Kadesh. Kadesh also shows up in Chariots of Fire, so that's why I say that. The battle is in Chariots of Fire as well. Was that XTR, or was that Against the Odds? Because I thought that was an Against the Odds game, but I could be mistaken about that.
Oh my God, I just had something I read.
But yeah, I think it is the oldest battle I've ever seen in a war game.
Kadesh?
Yeah.
How far back does that go?
Like 3,500 BC or something like that. Don't quote me on the number. It's many millennia BC is all I can tell you.
Who are the belligerents?
Some ancient Mesopotamians and some other ancient Mesopotamians. So obviously not an expert on this particular period.
But that's kind of interesting.
Chariots of Fire is neat. It's got a lot of content, as these tip games tend to. It's got a lot of content in it. But there's a Battle of Troy scenario in there too, which actually features the heroes of the Iliad and heroic rules for heroic duels and stuff like that too. It's pretty nifty.
Well,
The Lost Valley on Dien Bien Phu. Okay.
And you said Troy. I got Brad Pitt in my head for some reason. And I'll tell you something, okay?
I like
I'm
that
gonna
movie.
say something. I'm going to disclose something. You know that scene where the kid goes running, the opening scene, stuff like that? What's his name? Achilles. Achilles,
Right.
Achilles. The guy wants you, and he's got like 2 women.
Right.
Well, I was checking out because there's an ass, a picture of an ass there, and I said, check out that chick. Well, it turned out to be Brad Pitt's ass. What do you want from me?
Well, I'm sure it's a fine ass. I don't know what to say. So I like that movie. And I mean, it's not as good a movie as, say, Gladiator, but I mean, Troy has a little less cause to be thought of as a historical movie than Gladiator does, but Gladiator is historically dubious as well. I liked Brad Pitt in it, actually, in Troy. I liked it not because of his line delivery, which generally was not great, but he had a really cool physicality. That could have been him. That could have been the fight choreographers. It could have been the direction. I have no idea. But I thought it worked. Also, the duel between him and Hector is really well done. Egypt and the Assyrians. Yeah, that sounds right. For Kadesh. So,
Jesus Christ wasn't around.
No, not for another 3,000 years or so.
It was a different world back then.
Well, it definitely was. Ziggurats, all that stuff. Human sacrifice. Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
I don't know. And maybe they were very, very, civilized. Obviously, they were. Look at the pyramids. But anyways. Someone said that the pyramids were for grain. To hold grain.
That's definitely not true. That's about as dumb as saying somebody did say that. Some public figure, I forget who it was.
I don't know.
God,
I heard it.
Did say that they were to store grain. No. They were not. They are, in fact, like 99% solid piles of rock with some tunnels in them.
Oh, man. I want to get into ancients. MMP, no ancients, right?
MMP has Siege of Jerusalem or Storm over Jerusalem coming, which is the area impulse system from
the old Avalon Hill.
Yeah, from Breakout Normandy, that kind of thing. But the subject is the Roman Siege of Jerusalem in 46 AD or whatever that was. So, well, that's not that's one thing you can say is that the statement that the pyramids were built to store grain is only slightly less ludicrous than that they were built by aliens.
And I don't want to change the subject, but something happened a couple of months ago. 9 flying crafts surrounded the Nimitz.
I heard something about that, but until some otherwise reputable looking military source said something about that, but I haven't really read up on it or anything like that. So I am not capable of talking about that.
Okay, so we'll not talk about that.
I mean, we could talk about that, but I'm not.
No, I'm just wondering why we're not more hysterical. Because you're not
There's enough non-alien stuff going on to get hysterical about.
No, I understand, but
I mean, just the environment. Somebody did this is a video game video, but the idea, I'm not going to talk about it in a video game context, but it applies to wargaming or whatever your hobby is. You're a model train builder. People pay way more attention to people ranting negatively about stuff than positive talk, right? So. The term I was particularly drawn to was outrage merchant, where people it's very tempting to do that because people, to be honest, if I do a video where I just rant, people will watch that video, and it will probably get a lot of hits and be real popular. But I don't want to be that person, and that's more important to me than getting the hits. So we are, the world is a tough place in a lot of ways. I do not feel it valuable to focus intently on the negative things in our hobbies. Are there things that we can complain about? Absolutely, we can. But I also don't want to focus exclusively on that.
And what's Falcon Lake?
Falcon Lake. That's where some alien stuff happened, I believe.
Oh, so it's matter of fact conversation.
I was in a movie or something like that. I am not the right. Or is it Groom Lake? Was that what I'm thinking? But serious UFO event in Canada. I don't even know where the Roswell. That's what I know. Although I've been to the Air Force Base in Dayton, where they keep not the base, but the museum where they kept the aliens, supposedly. And it's a fabulous museum. That's all I can say.
Is it next to Ripley's?
There's no Ripley's, believe it or not, in Dayton, Ohio. No, but Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which the museum is associated with, is.
No, I just wanted to say, because it's not like 9 aircrafts around my house. They're around the Nimitz.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more serious.
Well, was it the Russians? I mean, that's my first thought. Was it the Russians buzzed some British ships in the Black Sea the other day too?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's news that just came out like today. He's in Canada. It's never hot in Canada, from what I hear. I'm unfamiliar with Caesar's Legions, other than that there's a game called Caesar's Legions, but it is not regarded all that highly nowadays. Let me put it that way. I mean, lots of people have fond memories of it, I'm sure, but I have fond memories of some really dreadful games from the 80s and 90s as well. So,
Mickey, next week, Artie, I want to do movies.
Okay, let's do movies.
All right.
Let's do movies. Are we going to be on my? We've got to get it right. I should actually schedule this stuff.
Well,
I have a tracking sheet for this exact thing. I've been a bit distracted, so if this is to the audience, if this is on a different channel than you expected it to be on, that's why, because I am disorganized.
Where are we going to do it next week?
Let's do it. If you want to do movies, let's do it on your channel.
All right. Okay.
Either that or we have. Where's my? Here we go. My other topic idea was sci-fi war games.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Let's do that next week at my place, and then the week after we'll do war movies at your place.
Bloody hell!
I'm writing a date down. So
okay, do you want to get Jim Crone?
Well, that would be awesome. Yeah,
I'll ask him.
Okay, then I'll make sure I have the link for you well in advance, like tomorrow.
Well, I mean, I'll ask him. He's quite the catch. Meaning, you got to really fish for him.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But you want to be able to turn that around into an actual invitation, and then not. Oh, we'll send you the link 6 minutes before the stream starts. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Just saying.
I did that to somebody.
So, yeah, hypothetically, of course. Compass Games is going to have STUKAJOE on their next stream. That's awesome.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
Where do you see that?
It was on one of the Facebook things. Might be the Compass Game. There's a Compass Games enthusiasts Facebook group, which has about 1,000 people in it now, I think, and which is the quality of the conversation there is decent. Okay. So I don't know when that is. Okay. But their things are usually on Thursdays, so it might even be tomorrow. I don't know.
And I'm wondering why STUKAJOE? Does he have something coming up for Compass?
The STUKAJOE is awesome. I understand. But I mean, yes, that's why I had him on. But I don't know. I know he's got the solitaire system in the pipeline from GMT. Yeah. But I don't know if he's working on something with Compass or not. I find it totally believable that they just wanted him on because he's awesome. That's completely credible.
I don't know. They're business oriented, man.
Okay.
And so you're not going to have STUKAJOE just to have STUKAJOE.
I mean, I would. I did. But
no, but I understand. But you got nothing to sell.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know what he's going to talk about. Maybe for all I know, Joe's got some fabulous game design in the works. I don't know. I am not privy to that information. So that's possible. So tune in whenever that happens, presumably tomorrow, and find out. So
it's actually holiday for us tomorrow. It's called Saint Jean Baptiste. It is the French Canadian time to speak up.
Okay, I thought it was like a celebration of some famous pastry chef or something like that.
Oh my God, you'd get killed here just saying that.
Anyway, so the Patrick Pictures mentioned. Well, we can talk about this in the war movies, the Oliver Stone Alexander movie.
Next week,
Possibly even I'll have like a depressive episode and I'll watch the thing. That would be my research quotient for the decade, right there.
Okay, just to make sure for me, next week is at your house. Is that
next
right?
week? Sci-fi war games at my place. The following week, war movies at your place.
Yeah.
You gotta watch. You've seen A Bridge Too Far, right?
Of course.
Okay, because I was gonna talk for like an hour on A Bridge Too Far, so which I could easily do because it's a great movie.
But you know what? It's funny you say that. It's a great movie, but it ends in disaster for reality.
Yeah, that's one of the causes of drama in the story, right? Is that it didn't go that well. It did not succeed in its objectives, and its objectives were total. In that, if they didn't get all the objectives, the whole operation was kind of pointless and just represented a lot of people getting killed.
Wow.
Mike Anthony mentions DVG's Field Commander Alexander.
Yeah.
So there's a fair amount of video on the Field Commander games on the internet. There's 4 of them. Okay, there's Napoleon, Alexander, Rommel, and Nimitz. And the Nimitz game is not well regarded, and lots of people didn't like the Rommel game. I personally will vouch for the Napoleon game. It is wonderful, but the Alexander game is also well regarded. So, and those are kind of like strategic tactical blend type of thing. At least the Napoleon one is, but it's a wonderful. If I was literally on a desert island and had nobody to play with, I would seriously consider Field Commander Napoleon because it's got like a complete Napoleonic experience in that box. You want to pick the Italian campaign, the Russian campaign, the Danube campaign, whatever. They're all in there.
And I love the strategic and tactical aspect.
Yeah, and then when you have when a battle happens on this operational map, and then you zoom into like the tactical display, which is fairly abstract, but it's fun and neat to play. So, highly recommended.
Can that system be done for a Civil War game?
Well, people keep asking Dan when Civil War Field Commander Robert E. Lee's coming out, and I haven't seen it yet, so I don't see why not. Would be interesting, maybe. I mean, I think the system could be adapted to Civil War. Let me stop there. So yeah, I think it could totally work. I mean, you'd make changes to it, obviously, but
going back to the DVG thing, Rommel.
That's a great movie.
Rommel is a supply thing.
Okay.
If you don't have enough supplies, you're toast.
Well, then you just play a campaign for North Africa, right? For the full supply management experience.
And Alexander, I haven't played. I'm wondering, I don't know what the system is, but it looks very like the Napoleonic one.
It is, I believe it to be lighter than the Napoleonic one, but it is similar. Broadly, it is similar to the Napoleonic one, yes.
Does he have another one? Fleet Commander, you said Fleet Commander Nimitz?
Commander Nimitz, yeah. It's been through 2 printings. I've heard a lot of people bitching about it, actually. I don't know the validity of that. I know there were some printing issues with the second printing. That was the relatively recent Kickstarter. So, and those were legit problems. But, you know, we've got folks we know made videos about that. So,
yeah. I mean, talking about DVG, Spruance just came out.
Spruance, the Kickstarter just launched.
Right,
the
sorry.
game that just came out is Zero Leader, which I was actually tempted by. I do not own any of the DVG leader games, and by and large, I'm not terribly interested in them. I was a little bit tempted by Zero Leader.
Are Mesoamerican battles considered ancient? For God's sakes.
Well, this is the same problem that we have with do those periods map in a sensible or useful way to those areas? I say no, I don't think they do. The problem with war games about Mesoamerican topics, pre-Columbian America's topics, is that there is virtually no, not zero, but the amount of documentation on those periods is almost zero. So you just don't have the written histories. That's the problem. Whereas even back, you could go find info about Sumerian battles written by the Sumerians, right? That happened 4,000 years ago. But the Incas, not so much. So your everything we know about them is either from oral histories or stuff that was written down later after contact, or it's stuff that archaeologists dug out of the ground. And that tends to not be super fertile for war game research. What is the topic of Warriors of God? I thought it was a Crusades game, but am I thinking of Kingdom of Heaven? I suspect I am. And I thought that was a generally medieval topic.
I'm trying to find a comment where someone said that the ancient battles in Italy, and Italy's not a flat place, man.
No, it's not.
So that's interesting. Now there's tactical places you can hide or attack from.
Yep, look up. There'll be a Wikipedia article on the Fabian strategy, named after a Roman commander named something Fabius. He took a lot of heat for his strategy of avoiding decisive battles from the 100 Years' War. So that's definitely medieval. Avoiding decisive battles with the enemy, but his strategy worked too. So that was not a thing that the Romans considered honorable to do, to avoid battle. You were supposed to pretty much, the honorable thing to do is charge in and have the battle.
And get killed.
And you have Cannae where Hannibal wipes the field with you.
Warriors of God, 1135 to 1453. Oh, hold on a second. Is Trevor saying that this is a war, or this is the time period where Warriors of God happened? Because
it's the period of the game. That's it's pretty much the 100 Years' War, which of course was not exactly 100 years anyway. And it's a relatively high level game, strategic level game. Kingdom of Heaven I have. It is a point-to-point, card-driven or card-assisted game about the Crusades. Looks fascinating. Haven't had a chance to play it yet.
And that's an MMP one, eh?
That is from MMP, yeah. But that's medieval too. So, on the other hand, what is what makes an Ancients game an Ancients game, right? Versus a medieval game. I mean, if you talk about it's in the Near East and it's in there's palm trees and these old fortresses and stuff like that. A Crusades game thematically has a lot of the same feel as an Ancients game. Compass has a Spartacus game too. I'm not familiar with either one. There is a Great Battles of Spartacus expansion for I think SPQR that popped up in C3I magazine. I wish I had that issue.
And would you call the 1100s ancient? No,
I'd call it medieval. I say medieval starts about 800. I gave you the exact date, Christmas Day, 800 AD. Yes. Coronation of Charlemagne.
Oh, okay.
Aachen Cathedral. That's my cutoff date for when the medieval period starts. Different people will a historian might give you a different answer. My favorite game about the Carthaginian Wars. So I've played Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage. It's quite good. My favorite game on the subject is Carthage, the First Punic War, which is weird because it's the First Punic War and not the Second Punic War, which is the famous one with Hannibal and the elephants and all that stuff. It's a little harder to map the Second Punic War because it takes place partially in Spain too, where the First Punic War takes place pretty much on the Italian peninsula. The game is a 2-map game. So that's my choice for games on the Punic Wars. But other people will tell you something different. Yeah, that's what I said. I don't know what he's really referring to here. So,
yeah, I got to get into it. First of all, I got to get it.
I suspect that there is a huge, fertile, untapped topic in war games dealing with conflicts in ancient India and China. And in both cases, those are places where there is documentation on those topics, and you could do the research, but probably not in English. You'd be looking at things like Sanskrit texts that may or may not be translated, and Chinese historical texts, like the culturally Chinese historical texts, a lot of that stuff has never been translated to English.
You got this, Artie?
I've heard of it. Campaign Command. What's it called? Campaign Commander Series, Volume 3.
Yeah, it was a Balika 3rd generation game.
So what's the Punic Island? Is that Sicily?
Yeah.
Okay. I just picked up a book on an e-book on the tyrants of Syracuse, who were kind of caught in the middle between the Romans and the Carthaginians, and the Romans weren't happy that they sided with the Carthaginians. So, haven't read it yet. A lot of people speak very highly. Judd Vance speaks very highly of Hands in the Sea. I've looked at it, and it does not appear appealing to me. That should not be interpreted as a quality statement on Hands in the Sea in any way, because a lot of people really like it.
What is that game, Hands in the Sea?
It's a game about the Punic Wars that is it's like a point-to-point, very abstract type of thing.
What's
it's got a good? I don't know. I think it was kickstarted. I can tell you that. At least an edition of it was kickstarted.
Now is Trevor saying that that's his favorite game?
That's what I'm interpreting. That is, yeah.
Hey, Trevor, you know in Italian what this means? Figure it out.
And I presume that the title is a reference to some line from the primary sources, but I couldn't tell you what that would be. Nightworks LLC, or Do It Games. Designer Daniel Berger. None of those things are things I am familiar with. I have looked at the map, and it's a point-to-point game. But it's on the first Punic War, which is interesting, actually, because in some cases, the famous one is not the most interesting one. I don't know that that's the case with the Punic Wars, but it's definitely the case with the Crusades. The famous crusade with Richard the Lionhearted and Saladin and all that stuff is the Third Crusade. I actually think the First Crusade is considerably more interesting. And that's a thing that Onward Christian Soldiers, which is a Richard Berg game on the Crusades, gets a lot of traction out of. That's a very nice treatment of the two. Not sure if I could say the same about Kingdom of Heaven or not.
Isn't A Few Acres of Snow? That's a
isn't that French and Indian War or something like that?
A Few Acres of Snow, I think so. But who's the designer? Come on,
Martin Wallace.
Martin Wallace. Now I'm gonna ask you something, Artie. I remember when I met Mark Herman, and I don't know, they were playing a game or something, and he shouts out, "Sure, I'll play, but I won't play the Germans." Now, in Ancients, lots of religion is happening. Is that a piss off to some people?
Well, so probably, because you can find somebody to piss off regardless of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't bother me, but
any religion,
and I think most people. So I mean, I don't want to say so. There is a thing that is neo-paganism that people are reviving. You know, small numbers of people are reviving Norse and ancient Roman and whatever other religions that had been not being practiced for a long time. Those folks might get up in arms about that, but I would think they'd have bigger problems than complaining that there was a game, depicting Zeus in an unflattering way, right? So I had that. I might even still have one of those, and they do not have a good reputation. If that's the series I'm thinking, and I think it is.
That name Joe Miranda, I'm so furious about Joe Miranda. This guy puts out more games, I think, than anybody, man.
I don't know if I mean, I don't know how many games he's done, but I know it's a lot.
A lot.
Richard Berg did a lot of games. Ty Bomba's done a lot of games. Just living designers, probably over the course of their career as designers, probably Ty Bomba and or Joe Miranda have probably done more. In part, that may be because they have both designed a lot of magazine games, and magazine games come out 4 times or whatever it is. a
Now
year.
these are not magazine games. These are not Miranda's magazine games, right?
Well, he's done a bunch of magazine games. I know because I have several.
Yeah.
But he's done some games I like very much too. Joe Miranda. So
is he redundant?
What do you mean?
In terms of mechanics?
No, I think he's pretty experimental, actually. He's tried a lot of different things. There's some pretty interesting mechanical ideas in something like Store Bastille, for example, which is a big World War I monster game. Rainer Knizia has done tons of games and just pulled them all from Grail Games, whoever that is. But they might be Australian. I don't know. There's internet drama about that.
I'm supposed to interview Rainer Knizia.
Yeah, I thought that was going to happen.
Yeah, well, we exchanged emails, and then all of a sudden, he's busy.
He's way too important to talk to lowlife like me, so I'm going to leave that to you.
Yes, thank you.
Also, he's done. Have I ever played? Yes, I have played a Rainer Knizia game, Ingenious, and I liked it a lot actually. As abstract strategy games go, which is not a thing I'm into, it was pretty good.
So you wouldn't play something like Blitzkrieg, 20 minutes World War II?
Oh no, I would try that in a heartbeat.
Okay.
I've seen that on a table. I'd like to try that. It looks neat. Yeah, I believe it is very difficult to actually obtain, however. So he's going to pull it out.
No, I have a copy somewhere. Why was that hard to obtain?
I think it was originally not a U.S. design, and I don't know who published it here. If it was even got published here, if it got imported, that happens sometimes. Like Ford Dato's games, for example, which I think is an Italian or Spanish publisher. Their stuff typically doesn't make. I mean, you can get it. I've seen people who have them, but it's a pain in the ass getting those in North America. PSC published that?
Yeah.
Oh, then maybe that situation changed too.
Hey, Artie.
So that'd be cool. There you go. Extra copies of Blitzkrieg. Email me at ARDWULF'S at ARDWULF'S@gmail.com. I have a lot of trouble saying that lately.
You're under the weather, eh, man? I could see you.
I have a lot going on. That's all it is. And I had a tiring day. I didn't relax at lunchtime. I went and did yard work instead of like relaxing or eating. So
yeah, Paolo Mori. And
it's an interesting. I've watched some video on it. It's an interesting looking game. I mean, is it going to like replace Fire in the East? No. But you're an idiot if you think that that's the intention behind that design.
I didn't say anything.
So no, I'm just saying. Some people will. Well, I mean, the stereotypical grognard will poo-poo something like that because it's not a hex encounter war game. It's got little cubes and it looks. You can play it in 20 minutes. Who wants to? But it looks neat. So David Thompson has 72 games coming out in the next month. So.
Maybe
I'm just saying.
He's lying.
Oh, he's probably not. He probably has 72 games coming out in the next 90 days.
Man.
So that's another thing that is attractive potentially anyway to non-war gamers is the short play time, right? It doesn't have to be 20 minutes necessarily, but something like under an hour, if you could play it in under an hour, that's very attractive. But I'm not, I want to sit down and say, I have a funny story and then we'll wrap it up. We're sitting down at the local board game club, right? And we're playing Normandy 44, which is a game I like a lot. They had a pandemic tournament happening that day. So the people who are running the pandemic tournament come over. We're 3 weeks into Normandy 44, and they're you guys got to be done. No big deal, but are you guys got to be done with the table anytime soon? And I looked at my watch. The other guy looked at his watch, and we're like, we've been playing for about 7 hours so far. Yeah, we've got about another 4 to go. They looked at us like we were friggin' aliens. They had. You mean this game takes like 13 hours to play? Yeah. They had no idea that was even a thing. It was like they probably knew on paper that happened, but then there's like people actually playing it. These people are maniacs. So just the look of total bafflement on their faces was absolutely precious, absolutely adorable.
So, Artie, next week is my house or your house? I forgot.
Okay, next week. I wrote it down this time. Next week, my place, Sci-Fi War Games. Week after, your place, War Movies.
Yes.
And we might do War Movies Volume 2 and 3 because I need at least an hour to talk about A Bridge Too Far, and then another hour to talk about Das Boot, and probably another hour to talk about Saving Private Ryan, and another hour to talk about Tora Tora Tora.
Oh yeah, and
which I haven't seen in a while, actually.
Patton,
yeah, there you go.
I keep watching Patton. I just love it. Anyways. Okay, thanks people for showing up, Artie. Thank you very much.
All right, very good, very good.
And I'm gonna do the professional thing and ease our way out.